It's 1 a.m. in Washington, 8 in Kiev, and 2 on a Monday afternoon here in Seoul. I'm Moon Geon-young. Here are the top stories making headlines at this hour. It's been 13 days since a passenger ferry carrying more than 470 people sank in waters off Korea's southwestern coast. Search efforts on this Monday are hindered by bad weather, strong currents, and floating debris cutting off access to the ship's cabins. Hundreds of thousands of Koreans visit memorial altars set up across the nation to pay their respects and say their last goodbyes to those who perished in the ferry disaster. And speculation is running high that North Korea may soon make good on its threat to carry out another nuclear test following Pyongyang's claims that last week's South Korea-U.S. summit justifies its determination to counter the U.S. by force.
I want to thank the people of South Korea.
Now, search and rescue operations are being slowed down due to bad weather conditions off the southwestern coast of Korea, where the Sewol-ho ferry sank almost 2 weeks ago. The number of confirmed deaths currently stands at 188, while 114 others, mostly teenage high school students, remain missing and are presumed dead at this point. Let's go straight to our Kim Ji-yeon joining us live from the news center. Now, Ji-yeon, what are we learning of late?
Well, Kang, a video has been released by authorities which shows that the captain of the Sewol-ho ferry, Lee Jun-seok, leaving without attending to his passengers. Nearly 10 minutes of footage was taken from a member of the rescue operation team, one of the first to reach the accident site. The captain is spotted without pants as he's seen leaving the vessel, which you can see is listing. With the help of the Coast Guard, Captain Lee can be seen hopping onto the rescue boat as he was not wearing a uniform or anything else that would distinguish him as a captain. He abandons the ferry without anyone recognizing who he is. This video is being viewed as hard evidence that proves the captain was among the first to get off the ferry. It also appears to refute Captain Lee's earlier testimony that it was very difficult for him to escape the ferry. Mokpo Coast Guard Kim Kyung-hye, who was one of the first to arrive on the scene, held a press briefing just 2 hours ago, explaining the conditions at the time.
My team tried to get inside the vessel into the broadcasting booth to tell the passengers to get out of the vessel, but we weren't able. The vessel was listing 40 to 50 degrees, and there were people in the freezing water.
Now, Ji-yeon, we're now in our 13th day of search and rescue operations, and the divers we hear are facing increasingly difficult conditions at the accident site. Now, how are the search operations progressing?
Well, Kang, the authorities are considering using more tools to speed up the search operations. Compact explosives may be used to take out debris blocking passageways within the ferry, but only when the families of the missing give their consent. The explosive will speed up operations, but there is the concern that it may damage bodies trapped inside. The move looks to address criticism that the search operation is taking too long.
Now, Ji-yeon, speaking of the search operation, authorities are taking measures to make sure that they recover all the bodies from this accident, and they'll be using what we hear are floating buoys. What are they?
Right, Kang. The buoys will be used to detect various environmental factors such as the wind direction, speed, water temperature, and water pressure. All of it will be used to determine in real time the possible location of bodies that may have been carried away by strong sea currents. Among the 188 bodies recovered so far, around 40 were found outside the vessel. There's currently a net, which is 13 kilometers long, surrounding the site. The search team is also expanding its operations to a 60-kilometer radius around the accident site.
And there's a new wrinkle to the investigation into the aftermath of the Sewol-ho ferry disaster, and It has something to do with the ship's lifeboats.
Not just the lifeboats, Kang, but the ferry's life vests as well. All those found on board the Sewol-ho were made 20 years ago. The investigators believe the products may have been used ever since they were manufactured in May of 1994. Normally, a lifeboat would deploy automatically when receiving external pressure, but in the Sewol-ho ferry accident, a majority of the lifeboats did not work. We'll bring you more updates later today.
Now, amid the national outrage over the government's slow response to the tragedy, the president is expected to swing the axe and make sweeping changes to her cabinet. President Park Geun-hye has approved Prime Minister Chung Hong-won's resignation, but only after the ferry disaster has been brought under control. Our Ji Myung-kil reports.
Faith in the government has eroded over the past couple of weeks due to its poor handling of the Sewol-ho ferry disaster. With Prime Minister Chung Hong-won's resignation, there's mounting speculation a large-scale reshuffling of the cabinet is on the way to appease public anger and give the Park administration fresh impetus. Political watchers say a number of high-level officials could get the chop, including Security and Public Administration Minister Kang, Byung-kyu, Education Minister Nam-soo, and Oceans and Fisheries Minister Ji Myung-kil. A number of ministers have come in for fierce criticism for their misconduct and remarks following the sinking. The ruling Henry Party says a reshuffle will give momentum to reforms in the country to prevent a similar disaster occurring again. A parliamentary committee has decided to deliberate on 7 bills related to safety at sea, while the Henry Party plans to propose new bills to eradicate bureaucratic connections with related maritime industries. The main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy is also preparing to unveil its own ideas on how to improve public safety. As the June 4th local elections edge ever closer, President Park's tumbling approval rating could damage the Henry Party's chances. The opposition party is expected to continue attacking the ruling party over Chung's resignation and its mishandling of the ferry disaster. Ji Myung-kil, ARIRANG News.
Meanwhile, criticism is mounting against the Korea Coast Guard and the government for how it has responded to the Sewol-ho ferry disaster. It has raised questions about how such a crisis would be handled in other nations and about how Korea can improve its safety preparedness. Our Son Jung-in reports.
Most major advanced countries have an integrated disaster response system that is activated in cases of an unforeseen emergency. In Germany, for example, information is shared among the provincial governments and civil experts under the direction of the Federal Office of Civil Protection and Disaster Assistance. Following a massive earthquake in eastern Japan in 2011, Tokyo strengthened its response system, giving the cabinet oversight of the gathering, delivery, and sharing of information. In England, a strategic coordination group composed of army, police, and fire authorities takes charge. When faced with a large-scale emergency situation, the Central Emergency Management Committee has full control and can even put parliamentary sessions on hold upon approval of the Queen. France's Public Safety Administrative Office provides coordinated direction, and an emergency response team of experts from a variety of fields is on standby around the clock. When it comes to the aftermath of a tragic event, the U.S. government responds immediately by deploying psychological therapists to help victims. Such was the case after Hurricane Katrina in August 2005 and after September 11th terrorist attacks. In both cases, the Federal Emergency Management Agency took charge of the nation's disaster response and provided support for the affected. The same guidelines are in place in Japan, where roughly $17 million is put aside for fostering nurses, clinical counselors, and mental health social workers in psychological therapy centers. With distrust growing toward government officials here over the Sewol-ho response, experts in Korea say the government is in desperate need of retooling its emergency management system and beefing up the Coast Guard's disaster responses. Son Jung-in, ARIRANG News.
Now, it's been a rather rainy day here in Korea yesterday and today, but that has not stopped thousands of people from saying their last goodbyes to the victims on Sunday and on this Monday. More than 6,000 people paid their respects at the additional memorial altar set up in the Seoul Plaza in front of the City Hall. Now, city officials say the altar will remain in place until all of those who died in the disaster are returned to their families in Ansan. Now, starting Tuesday, an official memorial altar will be set up at ARIRANG Park in Ansan, which is the city most touched by the ferry disaster. Meanwhile, Danwon High School resumed classes for all 3 grade levels on this Monday, some 13 days after the tragic ferry accident took the lives of so many of their classmates. The school will provide counseling and other psychological support services to help students grieving for their friends. Our Park Ji-won takes a look.
A grief-stricken Danwon High School resumes classes for all grades on Monday. The school has been closed since the tragic ferry accident on April 16th. Only the senior class was in school last week. On Monday, the freshman class and the 13 second-year students who did not go on the ill-fated field trip returned to a school that has suffered a devastating loss. To help students cope with the tragedy, the school offers various kinds of counseling support. The special programs will be led by dozens of psychotherapists and art therapists. The 75 second-year students who survived the disaster remain on leave, and it has not yet been decided when they will return to their studies. The decision will be made by doctors and the students' parents, who will also discuss programs for helping them cope with the loss of their classmates.
It is better for them to be together. One of the common programs in a situation like this is to have a camp for the students.
The parents of the surviving students plan to have their children participate in such a healing program, which will be staffed by therapists, medical doctors, and education experts. Park Ji-won, ARIRANG News.
All of the day's important events close to home and around the world. Join Moon Gon-young live from Seoul.
Mobile shopping market for the dual use of the Korean name East Sea and Japanese name Sea of Japan in school textbooks in the state of Virginia. Now, confident of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un is quickly gaining power within the ranks of the ruling elite, so much so that there is speculation that he could soon become the regime's second most powerful man. North Korean state media reports that Hwang Byung-seo has been promoted to the rank of vice marshal. That puts Hwang on the same level as Choi Dong-hae, the top political officer in the North Korean People's Army, widely regarded as the North's second most powerful figure. Now, Hwang's promotion comes around 2 weeks after a similar promotion to a first vice director of the Organization and Guidance Department, also one of the most powerful posts in the North. Hwang has been one of Kim Jong-un's closest aides since Kim was officially tapped to succeed Kim Jong-il in 2010. Meanwhile, North Korea is ramping up tensions on the Korean peninsula, saying there is no hope for inter-Korean relations. This comes after the leaders of South Korea and the U.S. vowed to respond firmly to any North Korean provocation. Our Hwang Sung-hee reports.
North Korea has labeled inter-Korean relations hopeless in its first official reaction to last week's summit between South Korea and the United States. On Sunday, North Korea's Committee for the Peaceful Reunification of Korea, which handles cross-border affairs, bluntly criticized President Park Geun-hye, calling her a wicked traitor and a despicable prostitute selling off the nation. It said the outcome of President Obama's trip to South Korea clearly justified North Korea's determination to counter the U.S. by force and settle the conflict with an all-out nuclear showdown. South Korea's Unification Ministry said North Korea's rhetoric was a violation of an inter-Korean agreement to stop cross-border slandering reached in February. Following Friday's summit talks in Seoul, the South Korean and U.S. leaders vowed to stand shoulder to shoulder against any North Korean provocation. North Korea has been ratcheting up tensions lately, following its threat last month to conduct a new type of a nuclear test. Recent satellite imagery has shown increased activity at the regime's nuclear test site. South Korea, the U.S., and Japan are concerned the upcoming test could be larger than North Korea's 3 previous tests. The latest rhetoric out of Pyongyang comes as North Korean leader Kim Jong-un revealed plans on Sunday to develop the regime's military prowess for a confrontation with the United States. Experts view the recent escalation in tensions as Pyongyang's attempt to justify itself ahead of its fourth nuclear test. South Korea's defense ministry said last week the North warned of something big and unimaginable for its enemies before April 30th. 황상희, 아리랑 뉴스.
And moving on, China has unveiled a set of documents revealing crimes committed by the Japanese military, including sexual enslavement during its invasion of China. The newly published book called Irrefutable Evidence comes at a time of sour relations between Beijing and Tokyo. Our Kim Min-ji has the details.
China has released once confidential documents revealing acts of extreme brutality committed by the Japanese military during its invasion of China, including the sexual enslavement of women and the Nanjing massacre. China's Jilin Provincial Archives released 89 documents, which consist of letters written by Japanese soldiers, newspaper articles, and other military files. The documents have been put together into a book titled Irrefutable Evidence. The Beijing News said 25 documents showed women forced into sexual slavery were from China, South and North Korea, as well as a number of South Asian countries. Another Chinese media outlet said the documents show that the total number of comfort women came to about 400,000, half of which were Chinese, while more than 140,000 were from the Korean peninsula. It added that one comfort woman had attended to 178 Japanese soldiers in just 10 days at a comfort station in Nanjing. In regards to the Nanjing massacre, the Beijing News noted that a Japanese newspaper reported that the Japanese military killed some 85,000 people in just 3 days. It added that Japanese military files showed that the population of Nanjing fell to 335,000 from roughly 1 million between December 1937 and January the following year. One letter showed a soldier referring to killing the people as slicing bean curds. Other documents were related to the transfer of prisoners to the notorious Japanese military unit 731, where brutal experiments on living people were carried out. Kim Min-ji, ARIRANG NEWS.
Now on to some sports news. Korean golfer No Seung-yeol picked up his first U.S. PGA Tour win at the Zurich Classic in New Orleans on Sunday. The 22-year-old shot a 1-under par 71 in the final round, finishing at 19 under overall for a 2-stroke victory, making him the youngest PGA winner of the season. Now, No took to the course wearing yellow and black ribbons on his hat in tribute to the victims of the Sewol-ho ferry disaster. He said he hoped to bring good news to the Korean people in their time of darkness. Now, over in San Francisco, another golfer of Korean descent, Lydia Ko from New Zealand, won her third LPGA title at the Swing Skirts Classic. The 17-year-old birdied the final hole for her third LPGA Tour victory and first as a pro. Now, after taking a break for about a week and a little bit more, we are back with our daily arts and culture segment. And of course, our Ji Myung-kil is back again to give us a look at the arts and culture scene of Korea. Welcome back, Yoon-hee.
Good afternoon. It's good to be back.
All right, so what are we looking at today?
Right, so recently they've installed a quite large piece of artwork in honor of a legendary figure here in Korea's history. And so it's been put together thanks to the help of thousands of people, and it's located right in the heart of Seoul. So let's take a look. He stands tall at Gwanghwamun Square. Given the title Naval Commander of the 3 provinces, Lee Sun-shin made history when he defied the odds in one of the most legendary battles in history. Today, he's commemorated throughout the country, and the most recent tribute involves the participation of many. For the past 3 months, foreigners from around the world, along with locals, were invited to write their names and messages as part of a project titled A War Diary. More than 30,000 people have so far taken part.
From young to old, everyone can contribute. Some of the younger ones needed a little help, but in the end, the final product was very successful.
Lee Sun-shin is a legendary figure in Korean history, and some of Korea's biggest names came together for the creation of this piece, and to celebrate the installation of the final product.
In India, there's Gandhi. In the US, they have Lincoln. In different countries, there are legendary figures that stand as a symbol for something. Here in Korea, we have a figure who much of the world already knows about, and this work is to show people who he is.
Korea's top designer Lee Sang-bong also leads the team, contributing his artful eye to the project.
Lee Sun-shin is a symbolic figure in Korea. He represents the idea that, together, nothing is impossible. I also want to use fashion as a means of making people familiar with this man and what he stands for.
And this project proves just that. With the help of many, together the words and names come together to create a figure of Lee Sun-shin, a man who shows that anything is possible when it's done together.
Now, Yoon-hee, we know that Lee Sang-bong is a truly prominent designer, not only here in Korea, but all across the world. And, he has showcased his works all around the globe. And if I'm not mistaken, this project is located where one of the most famous calligraphy drawing was once located.
Right. So for a few years now, a very well-known Korean calligraphy drawing by actor Cho Dal-hwan was placed there, but it has been replaced by this new project, and it is quite a bit larger than the previous one. It's about 50 meters long, and so it is still at the side of the KT building, so if you're in the area, you're more than likely to see it.
Right, and you also mentioned that this project has a very symbolic meaning for the victims and the Sewol-ho disaster.
Right. So a lot of events have been canceled recently because of this accident, and in light of the event, the creators of this project wanted to tell people that they want this figure to represent how thousands of people can come together and stand together and show that anything is quite possible with so many people standing together as a country and as a whole.
Right, and that we as the Korean people as one, we come together to give love and support to those survivors as well as the families of the victims.
Right.
All right, thank you, Yoon-hee, for that, and we will see you tomorrow.
See you then.
The area in which rescue divers are carrying out the search operation in the Sewol-ho ferry tragedy is looking pretty great today, with heavy showers off and on throughout the day. Now, wave heights are between 1.5 to 2 meters, with wind blowing at 3.5 meters per second. However, as the day progresses, the speed of the wind will increase up to 12 meters per second, further complicating the search and rescue efforts. Now, for the rest of the nation, we are expecting rain all day until late afternoon tomorrow, and the rain has brought temperatures down dramatically, with the highs around up to 19 degrees. Now, the rain is mostly focused over the east and southern regions, where up to 80 millimeters is forecasted, and the central region will see it up to 30 millimeters for tomorrow. Now, going over to our readings, Seoul tops out at 15 this afternoon. Meanwhile, the southern cities such as Gwangju and Busan will peak up to 18 and 16 degrees. Now, moving over to other regions, Jeju Island tops out at 19, Dokdo at 13, and Mangkeungang tops out at 8. Well, that's all I have at this moment. Back to you, Kang.
Thank you, Michelle, for that, and thank you for watching. Check back with us at 4 p.m. Korea time.